Welcome to cross-platform coding without a net. Are you guys enjoying Google I/O? Are you guys enjoying Google I/O? Oh, that's great, because we are sure enjoying Google I/O. Now let's imagine that I am an angel investor for an imaginary company that's building an app, a photo-sharing app called, Big Photo Stir. The app is called Big Photo Stir. And we are going to develop this app on iOS as well as Android. Now that's great, isn't it? Now working in a startup is always a race against time. So we decided, why don't we just live code the entire thing here at Google I/O? So here are my co-founders and coders. Hey! Great. And since this thing needs to work on iOS as well as Android, we've chosen the technology we launched yesterday to be able to do this. We've chosen to do it on Firebase. Because using Firebase, we can easily get Firebase authentication, Firebase storage, and Firebase data to implement this app. Authentication to get the user signed in, Firebase storage to store the photos, and then the Firebase database to share those photos, the links to the storage of all of these different things. All right. But you, dear audience, you need to engage as well. We got 2 microphones here, so please walk up to these microphones and ask us questions at any time to the coders, to our staff, chief of staff, or myself, of course, and we will try to answer those questions. So let me introduce the staff here. So for coders, we have Professor Ibrahim Olukaya and Professor Cal Reddy. And for Staff Oracle, we have Professor Ian Barber. And my name is Magnus Hidston. So without further ado, let's unleash these 4 coding hands onto their keyboard. Let this epic event start. Let the race against time begin.
So we'll start actually creating a new project on the Firebase console. We'll go ahead and start the big photos there.
All right.
So you're going to see a lot of typos in this. They're all intentional.
It's taken. All right. Now I will add our Android tabs.
Yeah, so actually the Android and iOS app will both share this same console. So once he gives me permissions to access this project, I can actually go ahead and add in my SHA here as well myself.
Of course, if we were pivoting from another startup, we could actually import our existing Firebase app or our existing Google project, but we're starting greenfield.
So once he does this, it'll download a Google Services.json file, and this file is what you need to use in your IDE in order to configure your project to talk to Firebase SDKs.
As you can see, we're starting completely from scratch, creating the project in the Firebase console.
Okay, so I have that.
How much time do we have left?
There you go.
Now, please note that we've almost spent 1.5 minutes and we haven't started coding yet.
So we can start a complete new project on the side.
Here we go, a project creation in Xcode, iOS. And as well as Android Studio.
If you see anything you have questions about, just run up and ask. There's no specific question point, so if you're like, why did we do that? Then
and I will do this. If you do have a question and you come up and ask it, I will launch a T-shirt. Okay? That's the incentive for asking questions.
There's so little time. We could be far, far done.
Excuse me. Yeah, I have a question. When start creating the Firebase application on the console, it asks us to choose a country. That's not we have we do not have this option in the last version. But what is this for? Is this the you have local caching on that country that I pick, or is just for information for the backend?
That's a great question. So the reason you choose a country at the start there is actually for analytics. So if you've used previously Google Analytics, you'll notice that when you go and sign up there, you have to choose a country. Because Firebase Analytics comes built into all the Firebase stuff, it's exactly the same. So it's for analytics purposes.
For analytics, that means this data storage is still located in US, not on any other data center close to my country, right?
No, it's actually the analytics reason is terms and condition reason. So it's kind of compliance reasons.
All right, who wants a T-shirt? Whoa!
So I have my pod installed and my workspace is already here. I'll start creating the project now.
Okay, so pod files are being downloaded. We're ready to go coding. You're choosing Swift.
Looks like I'm having a little light demo issue here.
So Ibrahim, as an experienced professional, is sticking with what he knows and going with Objective-C, I think.
No.
No, it's Swift. Wow, we're so up to date. It works on both.
Is that what I'm missing? I just made a typo there. Thank you.
Just
There
a
we
hands
go.
up. How many of you are Android developers?
Thank you. Live coding.
iOS developers? Good. Web developers? All right.
Yeah, it's worth noting, actually, all of these services are available on the web as well. We didn't have a third coder. The budget wouldn't stretch. But you could go ahead and build this exact same thing, Firebase Storage, Firebase Database, and Authentication, all work completely fine from the JavaScript SDK.
So Ibrahim is configuring the URLs in order for authentication to work.
Yeah, this is very professional. Oh, go ahead, question.
On Android, for Firebase, it still depends on the Google Play services.
Yeah, great question. Yeah.
But in some developing countries, their cell phone do not have Google Play services inside. Is there any workaround for them?
That was just a...
Yeah, so the Firebase SDK is delivered as part of Google Play services. In general, it requires that the phones deployed to do have Google Play services on that, which is, the bulk in many countries, but certainly there are some countries that the deployment of that is less common. We do have some APIs that will work even without that. So if you're using Analytics or you're using AdMob, you can go and deploy that even to a device without Google Play services. But what we recommend doing is actually building a separate APK out to target those other app stores if you're building something without Google Play services on.
But when I'm using Android Studio, if I do not add Google Play service as dependency, then it will have error pop out, so I have to add it in Android Studio.
Yeah,
I cannot take those away before building the APK.
So you could always build a product variant or a build flavor of your application, but the dependency is fine. The client SDK will compile in. The problem is at runtime, where some of the services will actually go and attempt to connect to the Google Play services service. In that case, that's going to fail if that service isn't there. So what you can do is actually flag off that functionality. It depends on the exact makeup of your app, but for example, if you're using remote config and remote config isn't available, then you can just not check it. So you can use the is Google Play Services available function to actually check whether Google Play Services is on that device, or you can flag it off at build time by using a build variant.
Understood. Thank you.
All right, so still working on auth on the iOS side. How are we doing on Cal side? Creating the sign in Vue. All right.
As you can see here, there's the Firebase auth. accepts credentials from a number of different services. So these guys are using Google, but you can go ahead and use Facebook, you can use Twitter, you can use GitHub, which is a little bit harder to demonstrate live because you need a server, but you can create a credential for any of those services and pass it through and use that to authenticate. And you can even link. So if you have someone that's signed in with Google and then maybe on another device they're signed in with Facebook, you can link those accounts if you wish, and then they can be the same user in your app, even though they signed in with different providers.
Question?
When you work in the enterprise world, you have to deal with more security and more authentication challenge. So does Firebase support AD, Active Directory, authentication, and other mechanisms?
Sort of indirectly. So the way that we support those things is through an authentication mechanism called custom tokens. So what we effectively allow you to do is authenticate using a token you generate. In that case, you can do whatever you want to work out who the user is. Then you give us back a signed JOT, JSON Web Token. We then trust that. So you sign it, we know you signed it, therefore the user is signed in as who you say. So you can plug it into any authentication mechanism you want with any kind of security you want if using that. It just requires that you have a server to generate that JOT on.
And second part, all my data on this Firebase cloud is encrypted, or is as it is?
Oh, is the, yeah, everything's over HTTPS.
But data is not encrypted, right?
The data, that's a really good question. I don't know the answer. Sorry about that. But follow up, there's the Firebase sandbox over there. I'm not sure what the situation is. I'm pretty sure we encrypt at rest, but I don't know for sure. So pop over to the sandbox and someone will know.
All right, who wants a t-shirt? It's time for this one.
And we have the first OAuth ready now.
Woo!
Okay, so we're closing
Yeah,
in
we
on
signed
10
it.
minutes. And we're still working with auth on both sides. Almost down to 20 minutes now.
So you can see what Ibrahim was doing there was getting the database reference. Now, if you've used Firebase previously, you'll be used to actually doing like new Firebase, pass it a URL, and it's going to pull from that path. Underneath, the same thing is happening, except because there's so many products in the new Firebase, there's so many little features, we use a config file. So there's a config file, that first thing that was downloaded, the Google Services JSON or the Google Service Info plist, that contains that URL. So when you call fur app configure, or actually on Android it's done automatically for you, that information just appears. So you don't have to specify the database URL.
Run my build.
And Ibrahim has started working on the table view that will show the actual photo stream. So we're now subclassing the table view cell, which will be a custom cell in this table, so we can see the photos as they're being streamed.
Okay, so on the Android side, you see that I've already previously signed in on this device, so it says welcome back, and it just shows a blank UI for now because I don't have any content here. So now we've integrated with auth. I'm going to work on adding the actual cards to show posts from Firebase.
One of the other changes from the old Firebase you may have noticed is that we're doing auth first here. The reason for that is with Firebase.com, when you signed up, you were almost certainly signing up to create a database. So the default security rules were anyone can read, anyone can write, so that you could just try things right away. Because there are so many more features, people might sign up and not think about the database. So we didn't want to have it default world writable. So the default rules in Firebase.google.com are actually you must be signed in to read or write, because that means that the developer's actually chosen to enable an authentication provider. So if you're doing this and you're like porting an app over, you think, hey, this should let me write immediately, and you're getting an error. That's why. Just go into your security rules, you can edit them there, or you can use one of the auth options just to get started.
And here we go, the post object, which would actually be the different fields that will be displayed in each of the table cells. That's a terrible spelling of cell, Ibrahim. We should mention this. This is not best practices coding. This is rapid development, okay? So whatever you see on the screen here, that doesn't mean that should go in a professional app. This is just a hack to get this app going in 30 minutes. Just to be absolutely clear about that.
We do believe this is the future of startups, though. If you want to pitch something, you actually have to sit there and develop it in the room with the investors.
So we got the new keyword in Swift, Ibrahim, convenience. What is that?
We are actually, like, instead of like calling the full parameter initializer, we are actually having like a convenience initializer. So if you don't give any parameters, it will actually call the other, the designated initializer.
And Kalian on the Android side also building out the layout of each of the rows in the table that we will have, the stream of photos. No questions? Come on, ask questions. There's got to be some question. Is this crystal clear? All right.
How do you handle account merging? For instance, if you added like Facebook and Google Plus on one device, and we had like some third-party provider on another device, and we want to add Facebook from this device to account on the second device.
Yeah, that's a good question. So the whole question was about how do you do the account linking and the account merging. So the system kind of lets you flag ahead of time whether you want to allow accounts with multiple accounts for a given email address. So like the easiest thing to do is just to start linking on the email address. So when you actually go into the authentication console in the Firebase console, you can check, and it's defaulting to check saying one email address is one account. In that case, if I've used Google and signed in and had an email address associated with that, and then I use Facebook and try and sign in with the same thing, you'll actually get an error back on the client saying, hey, we think we've seen this person before, and you will have to kind of prove that it is the same person by re-authing with Google. You can turn that off. So if you turn that off, then it's up to you. At any given point, you can call link with credential, and that is going to let you give it a new credential and say, hey, the current user also has this sign-in. So if you say let's say that you've signed in previously with email password, and then the user on the web, and then the user comes into your Android app and signs in with Google, and it's going to say, hey, I think I've seen this person before. You can say, oh, we already have an account for you. Is this you? If so, enter your password. Once they do that, you'll get a new email credential, you link them, and from then on, they can sign in using either provider. So it's somewhat manual, but once you've done it, the user can sign in using any mechanism.
So you have kind of callbacks on the client side that the developer can implement to handle all these situations, right?
Yeah, the whole thing's a client-side API.
Okay, thanks.
And you can also do things like email verification on there. So you can say, go send off an email verification. You can say, go send off the forgot password and all that kind of stuff. You do all that from the client side, but it's sort of managed securely.
All right. Who wants a t-shirt? Oh! Cool.
So I started doing some UI for my cell. I'm customizing each cell I will have. So I will have the posters image, the image they will be posting, and
so for the images, we're gonna be using Firebase Storage, which is kind of an interesting product because it wraps a pretty well-used service, which is Google Cloud Storage. I don't know if anyone here has touched on that at all. But that is a really nice service for doing blob storage. You can call it from your server and push blobs up, very reliable, very highly available. The nice thing about the Firebase version of it is it lets you do it for user-generated content without involving a server. So you can actually go straight from the client up to cloud storage, which is very, very cool.
All right, question for Ibrahim. Why are you using that editor instead of just creating the cell layout in the table view itself?
Sorry?
Why are you using that layout
Custom one?
editor?
Because I want to actually post like 2 pictures, and the normal designated one has like 1 picture and like a 1 text. I want to customize the text so I can actually customize each cell, that I can use my own UI, which will include like both user's image as well as like the post image.
All right. So still, yes, we have, Cal has just started the app, right? Have you authenticated now? Or?
Yep, I've authenticated, so it's not showing
right.
anything because I don't have the post content.
Congratulations.
Sorry, it's me again. I saw it on Android part, it is using the old library or semi-for called Firebase UI. Is already coding, but is it also compatible with the data binding library?
Yeah, good question. I had a couple of people ask about this because there was another Android tool where they talked about the two-way data binding, right? Yeah, we haven't done that yet. So there's nothing in Firebase UI that supports it, but Firebase UI is totally open source. So pull requests are very welcome. Otherwise, we'll probably get to it at some point. But yeah, the two-way binding sounds super cool and will work exceptionally well with with Firebase because you could just do that syncing.
It wouldn't compile.
You just talked about Firebase Storage. Is it also available for web applications, and can it be used to upload files from users?
Yes.
And is it
I
free?
like those questions. Yes, it works on the web. It is for user uploads, and the uploads can be authenticated to a user, so you can do uploads just for that user that only that user can get. Is it free? It is free to start, so it's part of the free tier. If you go to firebase.google.com, there's a pricing page on there. That'll tell you the limits. So effectively, we got 3 plans on the pricing. And this is a little different from the old Firebase database. Some stuff that was pay is now free, and some of the pricing is a little bit different. We think it's cheaper, so for most people, if you are transitioning, it should work out cheaper. But the storage, you get a free amount of storage and amount of data transfer. And then there's 2 paid plans. One of them's like $25 a month, and that is also hard limits, but much higher hard limits. And the final plan is a metered amount. So it's over, you just pay per usage. Usually the pay per usage one, if you get to the point of paying, usually the pay per usage one will be cheaper. But we understand sometimes people want to know it will never go above a certain amount. So that's why we have the fixed price plan.
All right, we're down to 10 minutes.
Where did this music come from? It's amazing.
It's just a countdown music every 10 minutes. All right, let's take the other side again. Whoa, that didn't go far. How are you feeling, guys? Is this coming together?
I'm trying to edit.
Guys,
What's that? Sorry.
is this coming together?
It's coming together, yes.
Okay, good.
That's right. So what I'm doing now is I'm adding an intent to launch the camera app and take a picture so that we can create a new post and upload it.
It won't, like,
And Ibrahim, how are you
it
doing?
won't let me in the navigation control if I had the button. No. I'll get that later.
So, did anyone spot how the Android app was configured? On iOS, we called fur app configure in the app delegate. Did anyone see how the Android one initialized itself? So this is a trick question. So I'm guessing you're really smart because no one put their hand up. So the reason you didn't see any configuration on Android is because it's actually done automatically for you. There is a Firebase app.initialize app method. You can call that and you can initialize the Firebase app. That will go and read a bunch of values and get your app going. You didn't see it here because by default on Android, we actually call that for you. So we're going to call that in a content provider very early on, and that is going to set the whole app up. Now, you might get into a situation where you actually want to connect to 2 different Firebase projects. This is relatively rare, but it's possible. If you do get to that, you can actually create another Firebase app instance, and everything will just work. Prepare the t-shirt cannon. No, he's leaving. Come back. Someone must have a question. Anything. We can talk about some of the other products as well. I know this is authentication, storage, and database. We got config, analytics, number of things in there that you might be interested in. We are happy to take questions, mainly to reduce the pressure from Ibrahim and Kalyan of live coding in front of all of you, which seems terrifying. I'm very glad I'm not doing it.
Yeah, we should say that. We have a sandbox area over there. There are 15 features in Firebase right now. Before yesterday, it was only 3 features available. 14 of these features are available on both Android and iOS, so completely cross-platform. It's an important strategy for us.
Okay, actually, Cal's just hit a really interesting point where he's now using the Firebase Storage API. So if you look at the Android thing, you can see this Firebase Storage instance and the reference. It's intentionally very, very similar to the database. So files are presented as in a tree structure, just like with the database. Now, it's not the same tree. If you have a database /users/photo, that is not the same as storage /users/photo. But obviously, using the two together is pretty common. Once you've got a reference, you can do all the things you'd expect. You can upload files to it, you can get metadata back from it, you can download files from it. And just like with database, there's a whole rules language. It's actually a slightly different rules language because we were working on taking some of the learnings from Bolt and from the Firebase database rules and building even better rules language. That's actually launched first with Firebase Storage. So there's a whole way of configuring who has access, who can read, who can write, and under what conditions. So it's all documented on firebase.google.com, but it allows you to do some pretty interesting things in terms of sharing and creating files.
All right, we're almost down to 5 minutes here. How are you feeling over there?
Almost getting there.
Pretty good. We'll see.
I was getting worried about that error message that stuck with you for a long time, Ibrahim. Thought you got stuck.
I can't add my button to the bar button though.
So you said the Firebase Storage has rules that you can configure. So how fine-grained? So can you configure like only upload images with a certain dimension? How fine-grained can you get?
Not on the dimension side, I think. No. So, Ian, do you know this? Ian?
Yeah, sorry.
We got a question. The granularity of the permission rights for Firebase Storage.
The granularity. How do you mean?
Well, specifically, I'm thinking if people are uploading an image, can you restrict it to certain dimensions, or like any other properties of the uploaded file to constrain it, file size or anything?
That's a good question. Actually, yeah, I'm not sure what the exact level of rules you can apply to it. You can definitely apply rules to the user upload.
Sure.
I think you can apply rules based on the file name, but I'm not sure. The best place to check would definitely be there's a whole long document on it on firebase.google.com/doc/storage. That will have the details of exactly what you can filter on. But yeah, sorry, I don't know.
Thanks.
Another one, just a
And we should
follow-up.
say that the Firebase Storage is also based on the Google Cloud Storage, the cloud storage component, yes. So when you see the schema specification GS column there, that's because it's based on Google Cloud Storage.
So yeah, follow-up on that question is, can we do data validation from the Firebase side versus on the client side?
So the validation actually happens on the Firebase side. So you write the rules, and you write the rules kind of on the console, and then that is going to happen server side. So the client can't, skip them or ignore them.
Okay, cool.
So
So I don't
you-
have to write it for each client and
No, it's a one-time thing. You just define the rules, and then they're going to apply, which is the same for database, actually. So in both cases, you define it, it lives there, and then the clients are unable to contravene those rules.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that 2 T-shirts, Magnus, or one?
What?
That was 2 questions on top of each other.
That was 2 questions, exactly. So which side is it now? It's this side, right? All right, guys, we have 3 minutes left.
All right.
Doing good?
If there's specific areas you're interested in about Firebase, there are a whole bunch of sessions around the different aspects of it, so definitely check the schedule. Or as Magnus said, the sandbox, we always have a bunch of people hanging around who know this stuff and can actually answer questions, unlike me. And they are, if you have a question for something, go over and ask them, and if there's not someone there that can answer it, there will be at some point. So we can make sure we get back to you with an answer. There's also, as part of this, a whole developer support thing. So we will go and try and answer your stuff on Stack Overflow, on the Firebase talk group, and all those kind of normal places.
Now I have to
Do you need Stack Overflow?
We have an exception going on.
But there's also a support address that you can hit. So if you go to firebase.google.com/support, you can go and fill in a form there. That will actually go to one of our sort of support team who are going to take a look at it. If they can help you, they'll help you. Otherwise, they'll escalate it as far as needed to get you the answer.
And we have office hours this afternoon. At 5 o'clock, there will be 20 Firebase PMs and engineers in the office hours tent. So check out the IO
In the Google
app
Storage bucket.
and join us for that. We will have expertise on all of the APIs in the office hours.
I didn't attach my recycler review to the adapter. There we go.
One minute left, guys.
Magnus, if we run
There we go.
Yeah.
He has success.
Now I can make it look a little nicer.
Oh, ship it.
I have a question. When the images or files are stored on the storage, is there any way of adding extra processing? So if I wanted to process, like, to create thumbnails or to create like different like crop versions, is it?
That's a really good question. So there's nothing built into Firebase. I'm standing behind the pillar. I'm right here. There's nothing built into Firebase Storage that lets you do like, hey, go and run this processing on top of it. But you can access this stuff from anywhere. The way I'd probably approach that is when you write into storage, also write into database and have a server process listening on the same database key. So if it's like uploaded images in database, you have a Node.js process listening on that. That can go fetch the image from storage, process it, and upload the thumbnails as well. So there's stuff you can do like that. There's nothing sort of built in for doing kind of process flows in Firebase Storage itself.
So we actually preloaded this app on our other phones as well. Let me see if I can get another picture here. All right, well, there's the Google I/O password from this phone if you want it. And I'm going to keep tweaking the UI so it doesn't look so horrible here. Already signed, yeah, so...
So the question was, can Kalyan show the sign-in UI on Android? Because he was already signed into the app. So can you do it?
So actually, I don't have sign-out functionality, but... so let's see. I'm going to try to kill the app, and let's see if it remembers me from last time.
In the meantime, actually, while I'm like still editing the other code, but like my data is showing, but the image is kind of weird. We'll fix it in a minute. We'll fix it like in a super fast minute.
Let me actually spin up another emulator and see if I'll be signed out in that one.
That screen is big. That's why it is kind of looking like too much. Yeah. I can make this.
That's not best practices.
This should at least fit the screen this time. It should be fitting now.
Yeah, I think it's because the...
There we go.
So let's see, I got the app preloaded here as well.
Yeah, maybe we can even
you guys.
take pictures of you guys. Smile. Let's see if the LT works. Oh.
There you go.
Yeah.
Should take like a few seconds.
All right.
Sign in.
Guys, working on anything else?
No, so I'm working on adding a sign out, but we probably don't have enough time for that in the
Can you
session.
do it in 3 minutes?
But yeah, we probably should let these people get home. Exactly. So so since I already logged in, it was already cached, and so if I don't explicitly add a sign out function in my app to let it sign out, it's going to keep using the cache credentials. Clear the emulator cache? Let's try that.
There you go.
All right. Let's give it a shot. Oh, now it's going to my other emulator. Let's stop this. It's pretty exciting waiting for builds.
Oh, yeah. What did you do? I came to Google I/O and watched an app dex.
Watch. That's probably it. We should make some more robust emulators here. There we go. Come on. Watched pot never boils. Watched progress bar never finishes.
You can actually
I think so, yeah.
you can
We are all
just
developers,
launch
I
the
guess
app
we know that.
from the drawer. You clear the cache.
Yeah, I think that totally helped. Oh, there you go. So there's the UI. I can select my photo, and it will drop us into the main UI. Oh, I really need to change this icon from mail to add. And conference Wi-Fi, come on.
Has anyone got any other auth questions? The auth stuff is largely similar to the previous Firebase database things, but there are definitely a few new features. Linking is new. Some of the ability to customize templates and do things like that is new. You can even auth to projects other than this one. So if you're importing both a Firebase project and a Google project, you can import the Firebase project and still use your old Google project, which is kind of a cool feature.
Okay, so now I'm authenticated. I think yeah. So that was the auth flow. I think I might have a bug in there where I need to invalidate my recycler view so it redraws once I have auth. But yep, so that's what an unstyled auth UI looks like. And then obviously, as we have more time, we can start fleshing it out.
Ibrahim, how are you feeling?
Thank God, I'm just like finishing up like the upload feature right now, and I'll be done in a second.
What other providers do you support for OCI?
Can you?
Providers we support, email password, anonymous, which is for guest access, Google, Twitter, Facebook, and GitHub.
Yeah.
And actually, the auth library that, I don't know if you mentioned this before, but if you look at my Gradle file here, my Gradle dependencies, I'm using Firebase UI auth and Firebase UI database. It's an open source library that's on GitHub now, and you can use it to, for example, here I have all my posts inside Firebase database, and what this does is creates a recycler view adapter automatically to pull the posts and send them and download them from database and load them into the recycler view. So it does all the attaching listeners, removing listeners, and all that for you. And also it has the auth component where I didn't need to add any, Google sign-in button, Facebook sign-in button, and all that stuff. The library handles all that, and you just start an intent to it, and then it'll authenticate your app.
All right, I think we have to close it down there. Let's give our coders a big round of applause. I'll give you a t-shirt for. Can we go over to slides? Yes, next slide. Yeah, so please remember, these are hacks. These are not best practices. This is not a professional app. It's just a test app for this session. So thank you very much. Very happy that you could come here and look at this live coding. And please remember, go to all of the Firebase things that we've got going on, in particular the office hours that we have, where we bring all of the developers. You can ask any questions to them at 5 o'clock this afternoon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.